mainly at the second part of the Easter play of Muri and trying to link that across parallel to the scenes in the Innsbruck Easter play. And also in the end, I'll be looking for the visitation of the tomb further back to the liturgical sources and also across Germany to northern German settings of the last part, which, as you might recall from the Innsbruck Easter play, genetically is the oldest part of the Easter play, from which everything then evolves. So we had been looking last time at the Mercator, who is in this play called Institutor, or a kind of lower class merchant, more peddler, how he was praising all his ware in the same way in which Rubin is trying to sell medicine in the made of quite dubious ingredients. And he is less of an apothecary and more of a traditional peddler who in German has a similar standing to what you would call in England the milkman. So going round and having affairs with the ladies whom he is serving. So here you see an image from the Codex Manesse, the medieval biggest song collection for Dietmar von Eist. Dietmar von Eist is one of the early poets of the pre-courtly period who sings the type of dawn songs, so that talk about more openly about sex than the courtly love poetry. And he gets this image of a man, and you see him just holding in his hand something that seems like a ring with a square stone set on it. What he has hanging there are hats, very fashionable, straw hat shaped, with decorating. So you could try to get that back into Fashion Week with a red fringe. These are fashionable handbags for the ladies, which are called in this play Säckel, so a little sack. The ending EL is the southern German diminutive. Instead of Säckchen, you have Säckel, which ties in with a southern German, Swiss origin. And
so could you say, like, if it translates a handbag, or is it better to say that a little bag?
It depends on what you want to. If you want to perform it, I would probably translate it in clutch bag or whatever is the latest fashion. So what you want him to sell is, But if you want to have an etymological translation, you say a little bag, because handbag in a way is an anachronistic concept, but I'm not quite sure what the historical term in English would be for what the ladies would wear at their belt, and which would contain their keys, so show that they have the power over the household. It's basically a handbag. And you see this lady is exactly one of these Frau Velin, fashionable young ladies who has her lapdog on the arm and has the money to buy these courtly goods. These are belts hanging over there. I'm not quite sure whether she's fingering it suggestively or whatever. But anyway, this is the type of luxury goods he is selling that to clerical minds were always a bit suspicious, smelling of unnecessary goods that could lead to sin. And then in the same section of the play, without any stage directions given in the Easter play of Muri, you have suddenly just the name Jesus in the margin, and starting off with "Turnt auf, ihr Fürsten, ihr Tor." And you might recall the line from the Innsbruck Easter play where the angels are singing it, because it's the Latin chant for this part of Easter: "Tollite portas principes vestras." And you remember it comes from the processional psalm and is split, was originally already a response, but between those who going on a pilgrimage to Jerusalem, who would ask, "Quis estrix, who is this King of Glory?" And then the answer is, it's the Lord God, the Lord Almighty, mighty in battle. And in the plays, it's divided up for dramatic purposes between the good and the evil forces. So it's actually Lucifer who is asking, "Quis est ixte rex gloria?" Who is this King of Glory? And then you see, even though these lines are missing, you could try to reconstruct them from comparing them with the Innsbruck Easter play, because what we would expect is a theological expansion of the literal translation of the Latin, in the same way in which the devil's talk is expanded, where he then claims we can well be safe of him if we stay in. So it's a kind of voluntary isolation in hell against the approaching virus from outside. And when Jesus expands on the answer, "This is the King of Glory," in that he explains it as a theological concept, so that goes beyond what is done in the Innsbruck play. He says it's this king who always who did not hide his godhead while he was on earth, and he has testimonies for it, Gezüge, and he is strong an Urlüge. That's not a lie, without a lie. The devil repeats the question, partly because that's how the psalm already works, but also to allow Jesus to expand more on the theological background of it all, because he identifies then Jesus, the king of the psalm that was sung in the Easter night, with himself, der Mägdesohn Jesus Christ, so the son of the maiden Jesus Christ. And then he explains that he wants to destroy hell, to rescue his Handgetat. Handgetat means the creatures made by his hand. So what he has done with his hand. And this is an interesting word for creature. You see him also shaking hands here. It's literally pulling out what he has made with his hand. He will rescue with his hand. The strong arm of the Lord is a phrase that always comes up. The word Handgetat, I don't know whether any of you have read Wilhelm by Wolfram von Eschenbach, so the second big romance, which is a piece playing between the love between the originally pagan princess and the Christian king, and she falls in love, is baptized, but when then her relatives are coming chasing after her and fighting her husband's forces, she pleads for them not to kill the pagans because we are all Gottes Handgetat. That's one of the key phrases of Guibourg's speech, which has been claimed to be a kind of or proto-tolerance speech. Well worth reading. So, and he then goes on to explain the theological implications of what he's doing. So everybody has been released from hell, and you have three compounds with helle Führe, helle Wiese, helle Twange. So that's hammering down the point. You are now free from that, as well as free from lies and sin, guilt, because nu hat erlöset sie min Tod. And then he comes back to the tollite portas, tu und uf die Porten wieten, oder ich stoße sie der nieder. So that's a kind of translation principle that applies to all of medieval literature that's derived from Latin sources, that you start normally translating a phrase from Latin, but then you instill your take on it by amplifying the content. And then comes one of the key sequences, so the sung pieces from the Easter liturgy, which we also had seen in the Innsbruck Easter play as a basis for that. You see it here in the text, all of it is in brackets, because it's not spelled out in the manuscript. It only appears here as anime advenisti desiderabilis. So that was enough for the director to know that there would be a sung interlude of this Latin sequence. He didn't have to spell it out. But what knowing these Latin allows us is actually to reconstruct missing pieces. You remember these pieces were used to paste the book block into the cover, and where the hinge is, there is a loss of letters because it had been opened and shut so often that this got lost, and it's a widening gap between the two parts. And you can play Sudoku with it, in that you can take the Latin words and try to figure out the missing letters from back translating or translating into German. So you have whatever is underlined is a direct translation from Latin. And you see again the principle, you have the skeleton of the translated Latin and then amplified to fill the rhyming scheme. So desiderabilis is translated as erwünschter Trost, so desirable comfort. And that advenisti, which literally means you have arrived, which is interpreted as a way of welcoming. So this ille komme you can read, and then you can reconstruct that this should be Wille kommen. Expectabamus, we have expected for a long time. In English, you could also use the older word, we have been biding, and that's exactly, wir haben gebieden lange Tage. We have been biding. So you can insert the GE, which is missing here, so dien. Bitte, you can read that these two letters must have been gebieten. Similar here, unser Sinn und Gedank hat gerufen an Wank. And the Latin says, te nostra vocabant suspiria. You have our sighs been calling for. So the Latin provides us with a background knowledge to fill in missing gaps, but it also shows you how this outreach program of the Easterplays was done by making the Latin accessible to an audience through interpretative translation. It's more of a paraphrase. So if you were to translate the Latin in that way, it wouldn't, in an exam paper, that wouldn't be the way, but it would be the right way if you were to translate for, let's say, children, a German text, and you fill in the contextual, cultural information that the children would need to understand, let's say, a scene from Faust. And then again, there is a hard cut without any indication how it would have been staged. When suddenly one Antonius addresses the Paltenere, you remember that's the name for the Berufsbezeichnung for the peddler, to ask whether he has any Balsama aromata to fill the Buchsen, so the boxes, little boxes. And we know who wants to buy aromata and balm for the containers, namely Mary Magdalene. So we see here in the marginal note Antonius that we have it was really for a concrete performance, because it must be the name of the player who performed as Mary Magdalene. And in the following, it switches back to Maria M. Maria Magdalena, instead of giving the name of the player. But that's another indication. What we have here aren't carefully critical editions meant to be studied in the library, but really performance scripts that are made just for one very specific performance. And that gives you also the freedom if you are restaging it to change it considerably. There is a real obsession with money in this play, more than in the other play. So you remember Pilate hiring the guard, trying to then get the money for that from the Jews. Again, they're trying to raise money from the peddler to bribe the guards. So it's all on a money-based economy. Here, it's not the number of coins that is given, but they, 20 shilling, but they should equate to the 1 Pfund Gewicht of aromata. So, and quite often you would have really weighing of money versus the goods. Just to show this type of very thin silver money. That's this is medieval coins that were found in a jar in near Jena.
So what was Flint?
What the?
100.
Well, I've just protected it. You'll see all the red things when we go through it, reading it out. But so will ich, dass ihr zählend you count into my hand that the 20 shillings. So. And again, a sharp cut. And Mariae, which is the plural of Mary, so it's now for the 3 Marys sing Quis revolvit nubis lapidem ab ostio monumenti. And again, it isn't written out. Anybody enterprising could try to reconstruct the German from the Latin, because it develops so there must have been the word for stone in there somewhere, and for instead of revolving, it's heben. So it's again, you might recall that that was also the case in the Innsbruck Easterplay, that it's not a round stone as in the Oriental setting it would have been, but rather a square tomb with a flat top which you would have to lift off to get it. And so we staged the resurrection near the tombs in the churchyard of St. Edmund Hall, which have this type of lids, but we didn't dare to lift them off. Not sure what's underneath. It's 1,000 years worth of bones, so probably better not to try to reenact it to literally. But I wanted to show you this screenshot because the group that staged this, and they were very good, from University College London, so kind of semi-professional players. They had the same actor play Jesus and the Angel, which is also something that was probably meant to be done in the Osterspiel of Muri, because you have as a marginalia for this talk Jesus, while that's really the speech that is taken from the angel's speech in the Bible. Wen suchend ihr, quem queritis, still based on the Latin, quem queritis in sepulchro o Christicole, and then they answered, Jesus of Nazareth. So this is this exchange. The angel asked, wen suchend ihr? And Mary Magdalene, who's played by Anthony, is answering Jesum von Nazareth. Good. Let's have a go at reading, and then we'll see at the end how much time we have to go in detail through the Visitatio Sepulchri, because I haven't commented on it so far. Good. Who was the what? Good. Gürtel, Säckel, Fingerlin, Zwerje sank den Frauvelin, der Fünde nirner solchen Kran, als ich hier für euch feile hahn. Will ihr men kaufen? Der wohl her, ich wähne wohl, ich ihn gewähr. Darum gerüfen ihm nicht. Szenenwechsel. Oh, we might close the door. Mit bei shouting then with bells. Will ich? Ja. Turnt uf, ihr Fürsten, über Tor, ich will hier länger wesen hier vor.
Bemag ich die nicht kommen gewesen, wir werden wohl vor ihm nächsten hier in sich leben.
Es ist ein König Grieche, wohl gewältig und stark, der auf der Erde nier verbarg sin Gottheit mit Gezüge und stark ahn Urlüge.
Wer mag noch direkt kommen sehen?
Das turn ich dir viel schiere schien. Ich weiß wohl, dass er ist der Mägdesohn Jesus Christ. Davon so lassend über wer, wenn ich zerstöre euch als ein Heer mit Gewalt über Tor, ich hier lange stahende vor, er hahnt mir hier gefangen, das mag mich wohl belangen, nur lange min Hand getat, viel männige Seele, die mir hart gedirnet stetig lieche, dir hahnt ihr jämmerliche Verderbet Ungehüre, indem er helle führe in starken helle Wiesen. Davon will ich mich fließen, dass ich sie dann löse und ich dir helle töse, so dass ich euch da binde und ich min Gesinde samt mir führe von dann bei du Wieb und der Mann, dir min da bietend lange in starkem helle Twange und auch mit mannigfalter Lüge an den Trüven sie betrüge, dass sie durch kleine Schulde verlüren mine Hulde. Nu hat erlöset sie min Tod, zerrechte von so starker Not. Zwich doch nu erstanden sie, gewährer Gott und todesfrei. Davon will ich nicht bieten. Turnt uf, die Porten wieten, oder ich stoße sie da nieder, dass sie nimmer kommend wieder. So, now you have to chant with us. Advenis di desiderabilis, quem expectabamus in tenebris, ut educeres hac nocte, vinculatus de claustris, te nostra vocabant suspiria, te larga requirebant lamenta, tu factus est spes desperatis, magna consolatio in tormentis. Siehst Wille kommen, erwünschter Trost, von dir so werden wir erlöst, Herre von der Helle, us großem Ungefälle. Wir haben in jammerlicher Klage, dien gebieten lange Tage, dass die göttliche Macht lösen soll an der Nacht, uns armen Rühre, us diesem Karkere. Unser Sinn und Gedank hat dir gerufet ahne Wank, in starkem helle Wiese, mit klagelichem Fließe, in jämmerlicher Rühe, mit viel stälter Trühe, wann du, süßer Herr Christ, der erwärmte Vater bist. Wir han durch dich viel Not erlitten, davon han wir din Kume erbitten. Nu hilf uns, Herr, es ist an der Ziet, wat unser Trost gar an dir liegt. Du bist uns nicht geswichen, la uns nicht versliechen, den Tiefel do din Gürte. Hilf uns, wie sehr er würte, la uns hier nicht belieben meh, oder wir sind verloren als Nu hilf uns, süßer Heiland. Riefend Herr an meine Hand, ich will mich erbarmen über euch viel Armen und will euch lösen mit Kraft von dürrer Gesellschaft und von starker Arbeit, zwem sie lieb oder leid. Ja.
Lieber Poltinere, hast du ich Büchsen leere, da in so Tor uns Balsamer und wir Aromata eines Pfundes Gewicht, völlig leer und minder nicht, das werden wir die gelten wohl.
Die 3 Büchsen, die sind voll, das brich ich auf min Trühe, derselben Salbe Nühe. Uf ihr die kaufen wellend, so will ich das ihr zellen, darum mit Gedinge mir 20 Schillinge, das entlas ich nicht in Ort.
Wir werden nicht fälschen den Wort, nimm hin die Pfennige gar und gib uns die Büchsen Haar, wir wollen für was scheren.
Frauwe, ich will euch ehren, da wieder mag ich nicht ziehen, doch wort es mir darum bemühen. Quis revolvit nobis lapidem ab ostio monumenti. O weh, nu Gard und Sorge zur Hüte an diesem Morgen fuhr. Wir mögen heben eine, nur sind wir zu kleine, der auf das Grab ist geleit, er ist schwere und breit. Wie soll er kommen, danne, wann uns von keinem Manne nierende Hilfe mag gefrommen?
Gott soll uns zu helfen kommen. Auf des Hilfes und begann. Und ist so rein unser Kraft, dass ich mir fürchte sehr. Doch sollen wir in der Lehre folgen und nicht verzagen. Ich kann doch je gehört sagen, es wäre sich ein Gottes Würde lad, dass der ein sanfte Wesen hat.
Ihr Gurten Wieb, wen suchend ihr? Das sollt ihr bescheide mir, also frühe in diesem Grabe mit solcher Ungehabe. Garn für Bass und erschüche nicht, weil euch von mir nicht Geschicht. Ihr süllend haben ihr Bett.
Jesu von Nazareth, den unser Fürsten fingen und an das Kreuz hing. Des ist hüte der 3. Tag, dass er in des Todes Bande lag, und den Tod verschuldete nie, den suchen wir gemeine hie, als richtige Zelle dran.
Davon ich Wolge sagen kann, sieht ihr Rede, ist also, fürchte nicht und wir sind froh. Des ihr also gehorchend und ihn hier suchend, der ist hüte erstanden von des Todes Banden. Das ist in rechtü Wahrheit. Sehend war er was geleit. Ihr sollen snelligliche garn, das sollet ihr den Aposteln wissen lahn und sagen ihn besunde und den andern das Wunder, dass Jesus erstanden ist. Sie sollen kommen in kurzer Frist hin zu Galiläa, so gesehen sie ihn da. Tralala.
Troste mich, zähle Seele wohl, wenn ich ihn nicht finden soll, so muss ich klagen nimmermehr, sind Sterben tut mir harte weh. Das Tor sag ich offenstan, da kam Toge ich gegangen. Da was das Grab leere, lieber Gerd leere, weil du ihn hast genommen. Du bin Togen mit herkommen, ob mir die Seele mag gescheren, dass ich ihn noch mal gesehen, so muss in meinem Herzen die rechte lieb.
Yeah, probably Schmerzen. Herzschmerz is the most common rhyme in German. So. Maria,
Rabuni,
ich bin erstanden, sich.
so lass mich herrühren dich.
Maria, das mag nicht sehen, ich kam noch nicht zu dem Vater min.
So ist Gott, Herr Christ, der je was und jemmer ist, Jesus einer Mägde Sohn der Soßen Marium. Du geschor für sie, die du dich gebar an Liebesrum begab, gewähre Menschen und Gott in des Himmels Gewalt und des Gebot der Himmel und die Erde statt. Es war's flieget, fließet Oldegard, das statt vielger in deiner Hand, gnädig Herr Heiland, den Martha, die mir harte weh, so weh wird mir nimmermehr, so die ich den Ungemach, Herr, an dem ich Kreuze sah. Da wieder bin ich aber froh, sieht mir ist gelungen so, dass du, Sursa Jesu Christ, von dem Tode erstanden bist und mir du Seele ist bescheren, dass dich, Herr, Hand gesehen, viel seligliche Tagen in sündigen Augen. Aller sündere Trost hilft mir, dass ich werde erlost von meinen Sünden mannigfalt und von des Teufels Gewalt. Lass mich nicht verderben, wann soll ich so sehr sterben? So bin ich an der Seele tot, hilf mir von der helle Not, des bitte ich so sehr Jesu dich. Auf den Gnade ergebe ich mich, du ehrenstacher Herrend, dem Elü-Dings sind erkannt. Offene Togen, das weißt du an den Logen, bedenken mir in Schmerzen. In den Nusslosen Herzen, dass ich dich, Herr, minne, von räuchlichen Sinne. Sieh an mich, hör viel Armen und lade ich mir Erbarmen. Meine Sünde sind so mannigfalt, dass sie beliebend unbezahlt. Ich weiß wohl, dass niemand noch lieb. So sündig war zu mir lieb. Davon fürchte ich versehre, dass ich jemand mehr an der Seele sie verloren. Sie troste an ich dich erkoren. Den Tod hat uns bracht von der Not. Die Not hat bracht den Tod.
Erlöst. Erlöst von dem Tod.
Ja,
ja.
Du löse auch du von beliebend mit dabei. Ich ergebe mich in dem Gebot. Du bist viel Gewehre in Behaltere. Aller Sündigen je. No. Vertrieb mich, Herr, von dir nicht. Mich rühren meine Sünde, die ich die Herr gründe. Laster und Missliche. Von der helle Säule. Den Tod, was unser Lebtag, unser Sünde ist, dir ins Lag. Davon du hast den Tod erlitten. Den Tod will nicht Gott vermitten. Wann uns den Tod hat gegeben, ein vielseliges Leben, jämmer mehr an Ende, doch du viel Behände, bist von dem Tode erstanden, löse mich von Schanden, von der helle Grunde, dorthin 5 Wunden, die dir die Juden taten, die dir Hand verraten, gib mir denen Hulde, die ich mit rechter Hulde. So ist er Gott verloren han, dass ich den Mord je gewann, der mir im Herzen das geriet, dass sich mein Leben von dir schied, mit starken Sünden mannigfalt und ins Tiefes Gewalt. Mich sehr han gesenket, viel was du mich das rettet, und muss mich rühren jemand, ich will gesehen nimmer, Reichslacht Bilde, weder Sam noch Wilde, Svenne ich frodeloses Web, nicht mir mag sehen den Lieb, des warte ich an mein Ende. Gnade, Herr, wende, von uns deiner Hand getat, du an dir in Bilder hat, den viel erbärmlichen Tod, der tierbitterlichen Not, die du an dem Kreuze liebten, da wir sind behalten Mitte, jemmer ewig lehre, dies hilf uns trägt in Rede.
Maria, lose, was ich sage. Ich han gehöret, die ne Klage und han die Gebet vernommen. Ich will dir zur Hilfe kommen, du genüßest diener Rühe und diener steter Trühe. Yeah. So then you would have probably again an epilogue like the one we had John speaking in the Innsbruck Easterplay. What struck me again when we read through it is how much of the words are repeated. So any opportunity for redundancy is used to bring the key message home. So in a way, the speech that Jesus addresses to Mary Magdalene is a repetition of the speech he gave to the devil, and the audience profits from hearing it twice, while the fiction on stage is that he is adapting it to each different dialogue partner. Or here in this speech you have again the Handgetat that is repeated, but also you have the lost souls in hell more or less repeating what Jesus said to the devil. He is redeeming them from hellfire, and they have exactly all the same rhymes. Here, if you look here, in starkem helle Wiese mit klagelichem Fließe, in jammerlicher Rüve mit viel steter Trüve. These are exactly the lines that Jesus had been saying and beforehand announcing what he was going to do. So it's consolidating this knowledge and the strong narrative of redemption by always saying, so he said he would do this, and look, he really has done what he promised. So you see a sequence of telling what Jesus is going to do, doing things, which is the bit we don't have any longer, we have to reconstruct, and then talking about, I have done this, which is a good didactic principle to uphold. What's also noticeable is in comparison, the Innsbruck Easterplay and the Muri Easterplay, they are obviously based on the same Latin and want to get across the same message, but the Muri play does it with fewer figures and concentrate and having more consistent characters and fewer comic elements. So the comic is really concentrated just in the one figure of the dubious, dodgy peddler, and also in a way in Pilate. But the peddler doesn't have this whole group of underlings that would duplicate the duplicity, and Jesus doesn't make jokes. He only briefly addresses Mary, pretending to be annoyed, but doesn't have this kind of banter where he says, "Oh, what you are running after men so early in the morning?" And rather, instead, the voice is given to Mary as a witness of the resurrection, to formulate her creed. And that's so Mary is very strongly the figure with whom the audience should identify and whom they should imitate in answering the what's happening in the resurrection with their creed, as they would do in a liturgical setting as well, when you have the reading from the gospel, and then the answer of the congregation is, have you ever been to Evensong, you will have the sequence, the biblical readings, and the Mag and Nank, so the Magnificat, Mary's song of praise, Simeon's song of praise, and then the whole congregation rises and says, I believe in God, Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, of all that is seen and unseen. And so this is, in a way, putting on stage the liturgical sequence in the Mass of biblical readings and the response of the congregation to it. And the vernacular allows more accessibility, but also allows to expand the actual text that is read out, and highlighting keywords like gnädiglich, good. So for the last week, I want to go side by side through the two plays and link them to further plays to see how these scenes are being differently accentuated in the different Easterplays.